Hey guys, it's me. I had told you the other day that I was going to kind of touch base on a topic that was not related to the cases that I look up or anything like that, but it was more about the public perception of correctional officers. A lot of the people that know me know that I've been in corrections for years. I've been supervisor, I've been a regular officer, I've worked max male facilities. I've also done medium, minimum, but mainly max, mental health and behavioral. I have also done segregation, which is now called restricted housing, where the ones that can't be in general population with the other inmates. So I've been in that one a lot. But and I've also been on a special team, what in some areas is called CERT or SORT, or black suits, or what other, they're different names. I've been on that team, and those are the teams that come in during like riots, go to other facilities, help with facility searches. I'm a big, I used to be really big into finding a lot of contraband. I was very good at it. I was like a hound. I could smell it. But a lot of people that have never been in a prison setting look at officers as these mean, nasty, rude, just low life. Like, a lot of law enforcement doesn't even see correction officers as law enforcement, and we are actually first responders and law enforcement. Thing is a lot of the reason people think these things about the officers is, for one, the media. Media will only show the bad that is going on that makes the news. We try to keep a lot of the stuff that goes on, and a lot of the stuff that does go on behind those walls, we protect the public from. But the media likes to bring out the negative. And so when you're hearing anything on the news, in the newspaper, online, it's usually about an officer being arrested for assault and battery on an inmate, arrested for a DUI, arrested for bringing in contraband, arrested for having sexual relationships or undue familiarity, which is a relationship established with an inmate. There's a lot of things that you guys hear. And but like I said, you don't hear everything that actually goes on. And the other people that have the bad perception of correction officers are the loved ones of inmates, okay? Now, this is where I think that I benefited for so long in this field, is because I've been on both sides. I've had loved ones in. I still have a few family members inside the prison system, and I've worked in the prison system. So I can see kind of both, and I've heard both sides. I've seen both sides. And I'm telling you right now that as a corrections officer, when I would hear a loved one talk to me that was in prison and they would say these things, like these nasty things, oh, they don't let me do anything, they don't feed me, they used to beat me, they never let me see medical, all this kind of stuff, it's usually a lie. Like, I don't even believe them. And it's funny because we have what they call inmate talk. So, inmate talk how do I explain this? Okay, so inmates have nothing but time. They sit there, they watch, they calculate every move. You have different inmates, even the good inmates, they're doing something. Whether it be trafficking drugs, trafficking pornography, trafficking canteen or store, trying to watch officers and wrap officers up, getting money from other inmates, stuff like that. Like, they're doing something. There's always an inmate watching you, trying to learn your habits, see how you are, and see if they can't find that weakness and wiggle in. And I bet you all the married wives out there that are married to inmates, and the girlfriends, and the mamas, and the sisters. I'm telling you right now, your boy, most of the time, your boy is not faithful. They usually have like their little pen pals. They're getting other girls' pictures. They're even talking to some people sometimes. And they're always trying to get the officers wrapped up. They're trying to establish that undue familiarity, that a relationship of some sort. Sometimes it's not sexual. Sometimes it's just everybody craves human interaction. And I think that's kind of how the inmates see it, is like, oh, well, I want outworld interaction. And so some inmates are like that. Now, I'm not saying all inmates are like this, guys. I'm not. But quite a few are. As a female officer, I know I've had to come over a lot of stereotypes. Female officers are known for sleeping with all the officers, even the married ones. Yes, officers that are married. Sleeping with inmates, bringing in contraband, being what we would call friendly, which is where you're just kind of like a pushover with inmates. The inmates know that they can get away with certain things with you. But me, and I've seen some other women, and I know some other women out there that will put those guys in their place immediately. Like, we don't tolerate stupidity. And female officers have a really hard time inside the prisons because of this. A lot of people say, oh, well, you have an advantage because if you work in a male facility as a female, they will look more to you as like a motherly figure or a daughterly figure. No. For one, I hate that. I hate that talk, I guess you can say. I'm not their mommy. I'm not their sister. I'm not their daughter. I'm there to do a job. I am there to make sure that the public is safe from them, make sure that they are safe from themselves and other inmates, and to make sure that everything kind of runs smoothly and make sure that they're getting the help that they need while they're in, such as if they need to go to medical, I can get them to medical or get them the paper or get them the information. If they need something for their parole, I can get them with the parole officer and stuff like that. Like, if they're transgender inside the prison, which has been the new thing in the PREA issue and stuff like that, I take that and like, I'm just there to do my job. I'm not there to be anybody's little woohoo, whatever, okay? But as a female officer, that stereotype is really bad. And it's even bad that male officers will shun female officers half the time. I know that when I started out, a lot of people didn't know me. They knew of me, but they didn't know me. And where I've worked for 3 different states. I've worked for Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. And I've worked in different facilities in all of them. I know when I started out, especially the old timers, I was trained by old time correction officer males that were like, these males have been in since 60s, 70s, 50s even. Like, I've seen some really veteran correction officers that I loved hearing their stories. I loved getting their advice. Like, I loved hearing that. And you don't get that a lot anymore. The correction field is so in and out. It's a rotating door. Constantly you have people leaving because it's not for them. You have people that are leaving just for something better. You have people that... It takes a certain person with a certain mentality and personality to literally do this job. And honestly, a lot of military people love working in prisons because it has... Most prisons, if they're ran correctly, have... a lot of structure. And in the military, you're used to that. Okay, at this time, this needs to be done. At this time, you do this. And at this time, you do this. Oh, wait, rush, hold, stop. Wait. Okay, this needs to be done. And that's the way in the corrections it is. You have a certain time that you do your counts. You have a certain time that you do your security rounds. You have a certain time that you feed. You have a certain time that you run your pill line. You have a certain time that you run your store. Your classes, your church, your rec, everything is on a time. You have a certain time that you're supposed to rack up. You have a certain time that inmates are supposed to go to work, if they have an inside job or they work for a work release. Like, it's structured. If it's ran properly, it's structured. But as a female officer, when I came in, I had to prove that I was there to do my job. And I think the very first time they realized that I was there to do a job was my third day on shift. It was my third day alone at a Max facility, and I was working in a Max medical bay. So it's a cell house, and we had the North 100, North 200, South 100, South 200. There's usually about, I want to say, anywhere from 100 to 150 inmates in there, because they were 2-man cells, okay? Except the ones that could only have one, that could only carry one inmate because of a condition, or they needed to be quarantined for something like MRSA or something like that. Yeah, we work in some the prisons are not the cleanest place, guys. Like, they may look clean, and we do clean them. They are cleaning, but they're a fistful of anything that's been dead since the Ice Age. But anyways, I rant a lot. On my third day, I was escorting 2 inmates that were laundry porters, or some areas they're called SSIs, which, or trustees. They are the ones that have jobs that do certain tasks and are allowed to move a little bit more freely, as long as they're escorted, especially in a Max facility. So I was escorting these guys, and the way you leave is you run out of the cell house, and you go through a rotunda, which is just a big open area, and we have our control panel right there, our control box, and it's a guy that sits in this big bubble for hours with all the keys and electronics and stuff like that in there to run all the gates of the cell houses, to run the lights, to run the doors. Like, they're your lifeline pretty much. But we went through the rotunda, and they're pushing their carts, and Leela wants to say hi. And they're wanting to push their carts, or they are pushing their carts. You're distracting, Mommy. And we were going through the north exit door, because if you go through the south exit door, it goes out to the rec yard. But we were going out the north exit door to go out into the yard, what we would call the east yard. Out to the yard and go down to the laundry room to get the cell house's laundry. So we were walking down there, and we had already loaded up all the clean laundry and everything like that, and we were headed back, and one of the inmates, an older gentleman, was looking at me, and he was like, "I'm getting too old for this, officer, ma'am. I'm getting way too old for this, ma'am. One of these days, I'm just going to croak and die right here." Like, that's how he was saying it. And next thing I know, plop. We had little curbs that stuck out like this, and he fell and smacked his head, and it was gushing blood. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, dude, get up. Thinking he's faking, and that he probably did hurt himself after he fell, faking. And then all of a sudden, he did the one sound that I've heard so many times before, but this was the first time I've heard it. And it was the death rattle, the death gurgle. And immediately, at first, I was like, I had no time to react. I had nothing. I immediately cleared the area. I had the inmate that I had with me. I called the gate, the guy that runs the gate, told him to let him in and get him out of the way. He let him in, and I said, open the gate so we can get response down. I called a medical response, telling him the scenario, telling him what I had, and telling him that I was starting CPR. I started CPR on this inmate until help came, and then we switched out, and we rushed him to our clinic. And they're like, oh, no, we got to fly him out. So we had a chopper come down and fly him out. And, bless me, sorry. Now, remember, this is my third day, and I'm just like adrenaline pumping. I'm just going. I don't even have time to think. I'm just going through the motions, doing what I'm supposed to do. And I relayed all the information that I had to the nurses there. And then when the paramedics that came on the chopper came in, yes, they life flighted him out. They didn't do an ambulance. They actually had the chopper meet us there. The paramedics came, and I told them exactly what happened, how he was acting, the sound, how his heart rate was, how his pulse was, how his breathing was, everything like that. Like, I just laid it out. And then after he was gone, everybody had to look at me and they're like, "Are you okay? I'm like, I'm fine. Like, okay. And I walked off to go do the paperwork. And of course we had to do paperwork and everything like that. And we don't like looking these inmates up. And some people do. I am one of those, I don't want to know what you're in there for. Because even though I'm there to do a job, there's certain things that if I know, and I'm not saying I would like neglect my job, doing like neglect or anything like that, but I'm one of those that if I know that you're in there for something really bad that's going to affect me, I don't want to know. It's because then if something does happen and somebody knows that I know about what they're in there for, they can say, "Oh, well, because they're in here for this is why you didn't do this, and this is why this inmate is this, and blah, blah, blah." Like, I don't want that. Don't need it, don't want it. So I just don't look them up. But in this case, I had to look up his file. And I found out he was in there for some horrible, multiple accounts of acts against a child. And at that time, I had my 2 little boys. I didn't have my daughter yet. I had my 2 little boys, and they were around the same age of these children, and they were boys. And I was like, oh my God. And it kind of struck a nerve. I was like, I just gave this guy CPR. I just hopefully save this guy so he can come back to prison, because he was serving a life sentence. He was in like his 60s, 70s, somewhere around there. But later on, it kind of hit me all at once I saw that. And that's when I was just kind of like, okay, what the hell just happened? Like, my adrenaline went down and I'm just exhausted. I'm mentally exhausted. I was like, whoa. So I had to collect myself, because you can't let inmates see, nothing like that. You have to continue doing your job. And I did the best I could and try to make it look as if nothing was bothering me. But in the end of the day, I ended up going home early, because I knew that being that my first, the warden and the major knowing that it was my first interaction with something like that there, they knew that I probably needed to go home and kind of process it a little bit more. So that's what I did. But when I came back, the nurses informed me that if it wasn't for what I did and the reaction time that I did it in, the inmate would be dead. He lived. He had what they call the widowmaker, and they had to put some stents in his heart, stuff like that. And he ended up being fine. Later on, he ended up coming back to the prison. And he has no recollection of what happened. He really doesn't. And he said, all I remember is hearing a female voice saying his name and then saying, "Are you okay? Hey, can you open your eyes?" And then he blacked out, he said. He didn't say who it was, nothing like that. I'm not going to tell him it was me. I don't want him to have that familiarity with me. I don't want him to have that feeling of gratitude towards me, because I was just doing my job, and I don't want that kind of relationship built. But other inmates knew, officers knew, and I kind of started making a name for myself. They realized, okay, she can handle her job. And then when it came to our first altercation, had an inmate attack me. He got mad because I had gone over to the minimum prison, and it's where they are over there. They have a lot of freedom. It's like a dorm area. They have little bunks that they all sleep in. They have no cells. They're allowed to shower when they want. They're allowed to move around. They play pool. They do all this other kind of stuff. They get to go outside and walk around. They get to do outside jobs. Like, it's a dream thing for an inmate. But usually these guys are getting ready to be released out into the real world. So we're trying to get them reintroduced to society, and we're trying to get them a job and trying to get them everything that they need to get before they get out. But we started going through, and one of the guys had come back from a job, and he was acting weird. They did a strip search, like the males are supposed to. Females can't be in there, but the males are doing the strip searches inside, male inmates. And I was going ahead and outside where I couldn't see nothing and going through and looking at all his items. And I found what we call a balloon. And it was a glove that was about like this, and it was wadded up, and he had it inside the lining of his pants. Like he had made a little pocket inside of it and was able to like pinch it so it looked like it was closed. But I was able to find it, and I found it, and it was a big amount of chewing tobacco. And the only reason I knew it was, and I was like, I smelled it. And you're not supposed to do that, but I smelled it, and I was like, oh, this is skull, because I did. But that's another story. And they're like, oh, okay. Well, I wrote him up, and then I also found on him some gambling receipts, and they're not supposed to gamble inside, so I wrote him up for it. Him getting wrote up for that, he got shipped back to the max where I usually work and shipped into the seg. Well, I had to go into seg to put a man in there into the cell. It was one of the seg cell houses I wasn't working in yet. And I put him in there, and he saw me, and he goes, bitch, when I get out, I'm going to get your ass. Like, he was cussing me out, guys. And my ex-husband, my now ex-husband, used to work there before I did, and he still was working there. And he was like, I'm going to rape you in front of your old man and show you how a real man is. Like, he was going after me. And I was like, okay, I'm new. So I ended up telling my ex-husband, and I told a couple of my buddies that were on the black suit team, what we call the black suit team, the SORT team. And they're like, oh, okay, we'll keep an eye on it. And the guy in Rotundo was one of my buddies too, and I told him, and he was like, got you. So on the day that he was supposed to be released from SEG, they warned me, and they're like, hey, he's getting released from SEG. He's going to have full access to go out to the rec. He's going to have full access out to the chow hall, medical. Just be prepared. He's going to be out. We don't think he's going to do anything, but you know. And I was like, yeah, okay. Well, sure enough, our shift change ended up happening during chow. And it was dinner chow. And he had just come out of the chow, and me and my ex-husband wasn't even out yet. He was still in his cell house. I was already walking out, and I started walking out, and the guy jumped me from back and attacked me. Immediately, we all started fighting. Officers swarmed in and stood up. I was fine. Later on, I would tell my ex-husband what happened, and because he didn't see any of it, he wasn't there, like he was where he couldn't see or hear anything, so kind of told him about it. And sure enough, I went back the next day, and I had a couple bruises and stuff, and I was a little sore, but it was nothing I couldn't handle. And they were just like, damn, like, you can handle yourself. And that's when I started working SEG. And in SEG, you have a lot of more officers, or a lot of more inmates that are, I don't know what to say, they're not there sometimes. They will catcall you. They will whip their fangs out at you and play with it in front of you. I've had to write so many cases for that. Yes, ladies. Yes, mamas. Your little boys do that to female. They've even done it to male officers, okay? So when they're getting these cases for stuff like that, it's not because we're just dry writing them. It's because they're actually doing it. And if you can't do it out in public, why do it inside of a prison? And now they get sex charges if they have too many of them. They get extra time. So it's a big thing because it's very disrespectful. I've literally had inmates come up to me and be like, you should take it as a compliment. I ain't here to be your eye candy. I ain't here to be your little fantasy thing. I'm here to do a job, and you're not going to treat me like that. Period. You're not going to disrespect me like that. If you can't do it in public, don't do it around me. Period. And I even told him, I was like, how would you feel if that was your daughter and a guy did that? And he goes, oh, hell no, my daughter would never work here. What if it was your wife? Oh, my wife. It doesn't matter. But what if? And they're like, oh, yeah, I get it. So their minds are a little bit different. Now, I've heard the talk from inmates to their wives and their mamas and saying, oh, I love you, I miss you, when I get out, I'm going to do this, blah, 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 we're going to have this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. And then a few hours later, they're on the phone with somebody else saying the same thing. Or when they get out, they realize, the family or the loved one realize, like, nah, he's going to go back. Like, and everything he promised isn't real. So I kind of got onto a rant here. But like I was saying, the perception of officers is bad. And I just wanted to confront you guys about what we deal with. We deal with riots. I've walked into a riot where you could smell the blood. You saw the blood. You saw bodies pushed up against the wall trying to get taken care of. I've been in a response where we had a suicide pact where a whole bunch of inmates decided to put their mattresses in front of their cells and catch them on fire and lock themselves in their cells. I have seen my best friends get stabbed for something as simple as the person on the first shift or the shift before us didn't give the guy an extra roll of toilet paper or wasn't able to get him a piece of paper that he needed. I've seen inmates on inmates fight. I've seen a brother inmate try to kill another brother inmate. I've seen inmates slit their throats. I've seen inmates hanging, and I've had to do CPR on them. I've seen inmates shove things in their penises to in their genitalia area to just get out to go see the pretty nurses out in the hospitals. I've seen inmates after a rape incident. I've seen some brutal things, and that's the thing that a lot of people don't know that go on in the prison, and it's not the officers. People look at us like we're mentally weird because we don't fit in with society a lot of the times. We have a dark sense of humor. What we would find funny that happens in the prison, other people would look at us and be like, oh my God. Or what we would think is normal. Like, I don't know how many times I've seen an inmate smear their feces all over the walls and finger paint with them, or slit their wrists and play with their tendons. Like, I've seen some messed up things, and I'm just like, well, that's just that inmate. Or seen an inmate pull out a razor blade from their mouth because they have pockets in their mouths or in their hands or their feet or somewhere, and just pull them out. And I'm like, well, here we go again. Or I found a big shank that they've made. Or I found a shank with my name on it, even my last name. It was kind of weird. I've seen an inmate have a seizure and almost die, and a couple inmates do die from an overdose of K2, or they got in some fentanyl. I've literally been in fights and one-on-one. I've been in fights and riots. I've had to watch one of my best friends thrown off of a run. I had to respond to two of my friends being beaten up by about 50 or 60 inmates. I've seen a lot of things, and that's the thing. Like, the moment we step behind that gate, we're in a whole new world. Prison is its own society. It's a town inside of a town, pretty much. They have their own set of rules, their laws. We set policies and procedures and stuff like that to protect them, protect us, protect the public, protect everything, and to make sure everything kind of runs smoothly. But inmates have their own rules and laws and the way things are. And to the inmates, we come in on their turf. We are just living in their world. But we can't think like that, because even though we are in their world, that is our job. That is our place, and we are in charge of it. And a lot of people buck, and especially older men do not like listening to like younger men, or there's men out there that hate women, so they refuse to talk to the female officers or listen to them. And then on top of that, officers are not just dealing with what's going on with the inmates. They deal with each other. There's sometimes we don't get along, just like normal places, normal workplaces. There's times that drama starts. Prisons are one of the most high school drama filled areas. I swear. They're worse than hospitals. But we deal with that. We're dealing with the upper admin and the wardens and the majors and the captains and lieutenants like breathing down your neck. And if you're a supervisor, like I've been, like, you're friends with some of these officers, but you also have to realize, like, I'm your supervisor. I can't just cradle you or give in to you and stuff like that. Like, I have to put my foot down on certain things. So it's different little things like that that we have to deal with. And then for us to go out into public and be criticized, there was a time couple years back where we were not allowed, and to this day they still tell you don't do it unless you absolutely have to, but we weren't allowed to wear our uniforms on the way to work. We'd have to change at work, or we'd have to change before we left home. Like, we couldn't wear our uniforms out in public because we've had officers get shot at a stop sign because they were in a uniform. I've been followed by inmates and they found out where I lived. I've seen things thrown, even from people that were not inmates. I've seen people throw things at officers and hit them. We go out to the bar just to unwind, and we're hanging out with each other and everything, and then all of a sudden, ex-inmates or other people come in, and they're like, ugh, when they find out where you work, and they just look down on you. And it's a bad feeling. Like, we're their medical, we're their counseling, we're their protection, we're their officers, we're their everything. We are their lifeline. We are the ones that control everything in that system. And we do what all the other law enforcements do on their own, all together. And we are shunned. And it's heartbreaking because we risk our lives every day to protect everybody. Even inmates that sometimes you're like, they shouldn't be protected. But they are somebody's loved one. They are human beings, even the ones that act like animals. So we go in there, we do our job. And one day, I hope that the public starts seeing us as people, starts seeing us as something more than trash. We risk our lives. We risk one day not coming home to our family. We get banged up and bruised and broken, and that kind of job is so negative half the time that you have to kind of find light in it. There's a lot of officers that I've known that have committed suicide or attempted suicide. There's a lot of mental health issues that go on from working in a prison. There's some things that you see that you can't unsee. There's some things that you go through that you can't go, like, undo. One of the ladies that I knew very well was a counselor for the inmates, and she was raped by an inmate. One of my friends was a kitchen worker, and she was stabbed to death. There's a lot of things that I've seen, and I've had to walk out dirty officers. So that breaks my heart when they do that, because that's like a spit in our face. We're brothers and sisters in arms, and for somebody to betray our trust like that, to betray our network like that, our community, our agencies, it's heartbreaking. So there are some bad apples. Everybody has bad apples. Every family has bad apples. Every family has secrets. Like, there's no doubting that. But it still affects us really bad when we have to walk out somebody for bringing in something, or we have to walk out somebody because they crossed the line and assaulted somebody, or that they've had a relationship with an inmate. They got wrapped up. Things like that. And that's the thing. The inmates don't care. And a lot of the families don't realize that. Like, these guys don't care about us. They don't care about the officers. They would rather just not have us be there at all. And so they sit there and they watch and they look for somebody with a weakness and they attack. That's just what they do. Like I said, this was kind of just a rant, kind of an inside view. If you guys want to know more information, I would love to give you guys more information about it, tell you some more experiences. I even, I want my husband, who works in the system too, to kind of say some of his stories, but he's shy. But he's had inmates throw their own feces and pee at him and had to come home and change. And like, he's been bit and has a scar and had to be on these medications. I've had to be on these medications that just tear you up and make you sick. So like, all of us have gone through something, and each of us have different stories and different ways of handling things. So I think it'd be cool if I can get my husband on here so you guys can see him and talk, but he's shy. So, but until next time, guys, thank you for listening and stay blessed.